Well, thank you so much for coming and visiting the Star-Tribune editorial board. I think all of you are veterans of this before, so I don't think any of this is going to be new. So list of questions. We'll start on one end and we'll just we'll alternate through the questions so nobody's stuck answering all of them. So without further ado, and take a chance to introduce yourself first and just say who you are, of course, after I ask the question. But I thought we'll just get right into it. Removal ordinance. The council recently approved an ordinance codifying how it would remove a member and expanded its ethics rules. Was this the right thing to do? Why or why not? And if not, what would you propose instead? And Kenye, start with you.
Absolutely. I think that council needs a framework to work within when something very inappropriate happens. State statute gives us that authority to put that process in place. I think the recent, last couple of years has showed that we have a need for this framework. Would I change anything we did? You know, I don't know. I think that we worked with what we had and the information we had, and we put a framework in place to address issues as they come up in the future, and I fully support it.
Robin Bundell.
I'm Robin Bundell with Ward 1. I'm going to be on the opposite side of Kenye, but obviously my perception is from the outside looking in. I think that it was a sad day that we actually had to pass an ordinance where we had ethics, because I really thought that the city council and the city employees were all bound by one ethical standard and that we shouldn't have to have something separate for the electeds. That being said, the ordinance is in place, and I think it's maybe a little bit poorly worded, and I even have some concerns if it is constitutional or not. But I know that the attorneys have looked at it, and so I guess the real truth is going to be if someone ever tests it. The thing that I do get concerned about, though, is that you need to have 6 votes. And if one person on the council doesn't go along with the rest of the council, I do have a concern that this could really become something that a group of people could say, you know what, we don't like what she's saying or he's saying and what they're doing, so they could use that as a tool. The other thing is that in the process they are allowing for council. I mean, there is a hearing, I understand that. There is, there's be findings, there's a chance to, to rebut it, but all of that attorney time for the council is paid for by the council. And someone new going in, you stop and rethink, is this something that I want to do? Because if something happened, I would have to pay for my own attorney. And that's just resources that, again, most people who want to serve their community do not have available to them.
So did you support a referendum on it then?
I think we should leave it up to the voters. I really do. I am concerned about council taking away what the voters have said. And yet I also understand that on the national level we have an impeachment process for our president if something goes wrong there. So I'm still walking this tightrope of what is right and what is fair and what is the truth and is it beneficial.
Holloway.
Thank you. I am Kimberly Holloway. I'm also running in Ward 1. I served on the council from 2009 to 2013, also from Ward 1. And I'm running because I'm very disappointed in the quality of representation that's on the council right now. With regard to the code of ethics and removal of a city council person, council actually has the power right now to remove somebody. If you don't show up for regular meetings 3 in a row with no excuse, you can be voted off the council. So this isn't any extraordinary power that the council has taken on. And as I said the other night at our forum, hosted by the league and the library and in the council chambers, this came up because it came up. And fortunately, the council hadn't had to deal with this. This situation was relatively unprecedented, at least in my experience and from the research that I've done. So they had to do something, in my opinion. I still have a lot of unanswered questions. I don't know who gets to bring an ethics charge against a council member. I don't know how you prosecute an ethics charge at the criminal level. I did a little research. Maybe we ought to think about instituting an ethics commission that I've seen other cities comparable to our size have done in order to handle issues like this. So, and this was not a knee-jerk reaction. I also heard that claim made the other night that the current council hashed this out for over a year. It was painful, it was a struggle, but the consensus was there that they had to do something about this situation, about this current situation, and to prepare for something that might happen in the future. So I support what they did.
But you don't see it as a be-all, end-all necessarily,
No.
where it is at.
Folks, my name's William Street. I'm running in Ward 3 for a position on the City Council. I am frustrated with the lack of leadership our City Council has shown the last 2 years. And as far as ethics investigation and ethics ordinance, I oppose it. I do not believe it is, I believe that the voters of Casper are the ones that should take action if they see fit. Back in the day, we had the same scenario take place, and it was Mike Reed when he owned Casper Pipe and Supply. With that being said, they did an investigation back then, and it's the same thing, and we did not have to go through this ordinance of any sort.
So I'm hearing you say that you're not okay with this ordinance at
No,
all.
I'm not.
So
No, I'm
as
not.
far as putting that on a ballot, then that would be something that you'd probably support.
Yes, I would support putting that on the ballot. Absolutely.
Next question, the river, the future of the Casper Whitewater Park. And Robin, we'll start with you. What should the future be? Is it safe enough, and why or why not? And if not, what would you propose to do about it?
I don't think we should mess with that White River or white water area at all. It is an economic driver. It is extremely sad that we had the situation happen that we did earlier this year. And I think there are other kinds of things that we can do to maybe help prevent that. One is that children who are that young should not be near a river unsupervised or supervised by someone who is a minor. Number two, I've seen the toss ropes, the throw ropes that a fellow has brought to council. I know that the council and some members of the community are meeting and trying to come up with some ideas. You know, life jackets should be absolutely required, but I've seen people float down the river without life jackets. And I don't think people understand the undertow. A river, when it flows, it moves like so, and it just pulls and sucks you in, and there's just nowhere to go. So maybe some river safety kinds of, community education, public service announcements, but even some supervision down there on the river by the Whitewater Park. It can be dangerous for people who don't know what they're doing, but for those who know what they're doing, it is a fun thing for them to do. The river is one of our gems. The mountain and the river. How lucky are we as a community to have those two natural resources right here, and we're in the middle of them.
You talk about supervision. Who would do the supervision?
I don't know if it would be, like Platte River Parkway Trust or whoever has I don't know who would do that. I really don't. Then again, do people need to take responsibility? If you know your child's going down to the river, you probably ought to go with your child. You probably ought to have that child in a life jacket and know where the throw ropes are and those kinds of things. So, we just cannot govern personal responsibility to the nth degree either.
Thank you. I have taken my children down to the river many times, never without life jackets. I always taught them river safety. My heart breaks for the family. I can't fathom losing your child that way. My heart breaks for the young man that went in to save him and their family. What a tragic situation. But I don't see a reason. What was said at the council meeting about taking the whole feature out, I think, is beyond what's needed. I think the city certainly could take advantage of the situation, and I believe is, with the suggestions that have already been made. And I'm sure there are other communities across the nation who have rivers that flow through their towns, and they have safety plans. They educate people, the public, about respecting the river, using and enjoying it safely. So I think that's going to happen in Casper. It was a terribly tragic situation that happened, but there's no reason to undo the improvements and the attraction that's been made out of that section of the river.
I believe the Whitewater and North Platte there is a amenity. I mean, it is awesome. The Casper Fire Department has life jackets down there. Individuals can check out. As far as the death, I believe that there is personal responsibility. Where were the parents when the young man was in the river? There again, you know, we're seeing that more and more today. The lack of personal responsibility from parents to children, and it's got to stop. It's got to start, and people have got to be more responsible for their kids' actions and be with them a little bit more often.
So I don't know how the council encourages that though. So what I'm curious about is, as far as is there a role for the city council in improving safety, at least on that stretch of the river?
Absolutely. You know, like I stated, you know, the city council are the one that approves the life jackets for the your fire department. And with that being said, you know, even if we had signs, we can pass an ordinance basically stating that it is a law that you must wear a life jacket when you're in the water in the any part of the river, lakes, or streams.
Thank you. So I actually have been a part of this committee, and I can honestly say that I have never seen a committee work so quickly and bring so many ideas to the table. So we're taking a multiple prong approach from all the different entities to come up with some ideas to prevent this type of tragedy. And granted, you can't legislate morals and parenting behaviors, but what we can do is we can put more signage out. We can put life jackets closer to the area. The area that it happened is really inviting. It looks like a little beach, and I think that that's something that we need to repair so that it's not so inviting for children to play in. There will be t-shirts, there will be an education campaign within the schools. It's been a phenomenal approach, and they meet weekly. So I think we've done everything that we can by bringing all the entities together to just try to improve awareness and safety. But honestly, the city doesn't own the Whitewater Park. I don't think that Amoco would appreciate if we wanted to take that out. So we're doing everything we can to just improve awareness.
Next question on the 1 cent tax. What's your view of the 1 cent tax, and if you support it, how should it be spent? And should funds go toward nonprofit agencies?
I support the fact that the 1 cent is voted on every 4 years, so it has to be an agreed upon. There has to be a consensus in the community for that to pass. What should it be spent on? I like the fact that it's not spent on anything other than tangible things at the city level. It's not used for salaries because, you know, it might not always be there, so you don't want to use funds for staff that you might not be able to rely on in the future. Should it be used for nonprofits? Yes, I think so, because they fulfill vital services in our community that the city, quite frankly, doesn't want to, and in my experience doesn't feel a real obligation to, because they believe that's the county and the state. But people support the nonprofits in our community and directly, and I think they also support those nonprofits with their tax dollars. I haven't yet to hear anybody say 1 cent money should never go to a nonprofit in the community.
I'm in favor of the 1 cent tax. However, with what has gone on recently up at Hogadon and on that little small project there, I can understand why the taxpayers of Natrona County voted it down last time, even though this is after the fact. I believe that as far as nonprofits, I believe it should assist the nonprofit organizations as well. And I would have liked to have seen in this latest budget to the Senior Citizen Center have be their priority higher on the list, like number 1 on the list, instead of number 4 or 5.
Okay.
Thank you. I absolutely support the 1 cent tax, and through my time on council, it's just become clearer every single day how vital it is to our community. Typically it's used for those capital type projects or purchases that we need to really keep our city safe. Traditionally, it's always police, fire, and streets that our community says they want us to spend the majority of the money on. I do know the senior citizens were concerned that they came in number 5, which actually is pretty high, right below those essential services. The amount of money that we allocated for that project probably could be more. So we have actually worked with the senior center to get the project list that they need and believe will benefit seniors, and we'll actually be funding them in a different mechanism at this point in time. But also we need to update our senior study so that we can better be prepared to spend those dollars for seniors and know exactly how they're going to need them. So that 1 cent is vital. I think the majority of the public see what great things it does, and I look forward to it passing in November.
I totally support the 1 cent tax. I have never ever voted against it. I think it is the fairest tax that we have because it's based upon the goods that we purchase. And it's, about $50, I think you said, Janine, at the form, that it costs each individual per year. If we didn't have it, we would see our water and our sewer and our trash costs go up a lot more than $50. The priority and the use of it, I agree totally with the way that it is. It's a process that we went through with, asking the public how do they want to see their tax dollars spent, and this is the way that they ranked it and prioritized it. So we're listening to what the voters are saying, and that is how the money is being spent. Fire, police, streets, and the seniors, while the seniors do indirectly get some benefit out of that 1 cent that they may not see in the senior center and in the bottom line budget that they have, but the senior population are the ones who are calling the 911 when they're having medical issues, and it is our fire department that is responding to them to make sure that they get medical assistance as quickly as possible. Our response time is less than 4 minutes, and I think that is a phenomenal thing to have happen. So nonprofit organizations, including the senior center, I think that a portion of the money should be set aside, and some of it already is given to the Community Action Partnership, and the Community Action Partnership then has a grant process that they go through with the different, all of the different nonprofits. So there is a mechanism in place. Perhaps I have seen that we've had some extra money, and then, some organization has come in and has gotten $1 million for something that maybe that needs to be cleaned up a little bit on how we do it. If we have extra money, that we could have a second round, much like the council already does with the community promotions, 1 round and then maybe a round 2. But our social service agencies are doing the work that we at the city cannot do. We need to support them.
Let's talk about the lodging tax. So we have a lodging tax hike up on the ballot. In this upcoming ballot, what do you think of that decision and of the tax? And as part of that, assess the work of the Casper Area Convention and Visitors Bureau.
The lodging tax, that's a difficult one, but I do support it. It brings more money into our coffers. And as far as the convention center, we had an individual in town that was going to that wanted to take that on himself, but the current city council decided not to, and go with a out-of-town individual to work with on that project.
But of the tourism bureau, the visitors bureau, how well do you think they do what they do?
Oh, they do a darn good job what they do.
With the money that they have?
Yeah. They do a good job with the money that they got. So, leave it there.
Can you?
And I've already said it before, I definitely support the tax. I think it's a tax that our community does not pay. That additional revenue will help that agency bring in things like CNFR, our different tournaments that we have, more sporting events, and really that just boosts our entire economy here in Casper. So I think they provide a vital service that a lot of people don't recognize if they don't have kids participating in sports or the work that they do to bring in the tourism. So I think it's worth it. I think it's something that our citizens won't pay. So, you know, we pay those taxes every time we go travel somewhere else, and Casper traditionally is one of the lowest cities I've ever seen in the taxes. So I think this is a good opportunity to generate revenue for this group and our citizens not pay for it.
I am going to go on the other side of this. I will not support the lodging tax increase unless I see a plan from the Casper Area Convention and Visitors Bureau on exactly how they're going to use the money, what their goals and objectives are, and have those be measurable so that we can hold them accountable. The CVB has a $1.5 million budget. They have gone up by $300,000 just from the last year. Out of that budget, they have 8 staff members. They have a $500,000 salaries and benefits. I find it irresponsible of the staff to at least propose to the board that they have a 7% salary increase. I find it even more preposterous that the board would consider it, and abhorrent that they would even agree to it. A 7% salary increase is not the community norm, and I don't know that they have necessarily earned that. They also get quarterly bonuses, and I'm just really concerned about, you know, how much do they really bring in? They are there to support those different, the different events that we have. But the CNFR was not something that came out of the CVB. They are just one of the partners of it. And I until I see what we're going to be doing with it, and other than 7% when the state got a 1%, and the county I think just got a cost of living of like 1 or 1.5%, and correct me if I'm wrong, but the city employees got full-time $1,000 cost of living allowance raise. 7%. Do you as a business person, do any other businesses in our town give that kind of raises? And so from that perspective, I don't think that they have done a good job. They also moved their offices. They were on North Poplar Street. They moved to downtown. Where does a visitor who has a RV park their RV? Where do they park an SUV? Where do they park, period? Because downtown is busy, and you're not going to get one of those big RVs into the parking garage. So they're there for about 5 years, and I know that the move was in anticipation of the convention center being built across the street. They need to provide the support to the chamber, because the chamber is the visitor center, and it was very difficult to get that amount, any kind of support from them. I asked for $18,000 when I was chamber director, and I told them exactly how I was going to spend it. I had a contract that we had the $18,000, and a year later we reported exactly that we spent it how we said we were going to do it in the grant. And my understanding is that the board did not send back the money to the chamber until several months after the fact. And that this year the chamber director really had to almost beg for extra money. The chamber is the place where the visitor center is. About 10,000 visitors go through there every year. $70,000 is what it costs. Gilda did a study. Some of that money needs to come from the CVB, because we are there, we are telling people to go, you can stay at this hotel, we're telling them what kind of attractions to see, we're encouraging them to go shop downtown where all the restaurants are, and giving them directions on how to get to everywhere. We've even planned trips for people who came in. I remember one time some people came in from France, and we planned an entire 3-week trip for them in a route because they had no idea where they were going to go. So they knew what they wanted to see.
So what I'm hearing is you want to hear a defined plan before.
I need a defined plan, and I think the 7% is wrong.
Okay.
I think I wouldn't call 1% a hike, first of all, and I do admire the fact that they're taking a big risk in asking for this year, considering the political climate of things. I think tourism is one of those economic drivers that kind of gets some cursory mentions once in a while, but it's actually a pretty major factor here and in the state of Wyoming. So I don't really have much more to say other than I think what they do is important. They bring good information to the council. I seem to remember several excellent presentations about what the city's missing out on because of the age of our current facilities and when conventions are looking where they're going to hold a big event. Casper gets passed over because we're a little behind the times when it comes to modern facilities. So I appreciate what they do. And like I said, I deeply respect the risk that they're taking this year, and I wish them luck.
Next question on infrastructure. Talk about the state of Casper's infrastructure, roads, sidewalks, water, sewer. Are you content with its quality, and if not, what would you propose to do about it?
You know, when you take the time to travel in other communities and in Colorado, Cheyenne, our streets are actually in much better shape than some of the other communities that I see. I think it's important for the public to know that really they can call the city manager's office if they have a pothole or a concern, and we're happy to fix those things. I believe we'll be spending $22 million, or proposed to spend $22 million on street improvements, and I think we really do a great job with what we have. Does everybody want a perfectly smooth street? Absolutely. Is it possible in Casper's climate? Never gonna happen. So I think we really do a great job with what we have, and with it being a top priority with what our community has told us, that's where the biggest chunk of money will go if the 1 cent passes.
Ward 1 has most of the main thoroughfares, 12th Street, 13th Street, Center, Wolcott. See why a lot of those are right there in Ward 1. We're one of the most traveled areas, and our streets, yeah, sometimes I think they're lacking in repair, but we have, I don't know how many hundreds of miles of streets we have in Casper, but there's only so much money that can only go so far, and if it's $1 million a mile to build a street, then you know that it's only going to be 22 miles, and that's only a small percentage. I also would like to see us do a little bit more investment in Ward 1 particularly, we are talking about walkability. All of the time I've heard they do different walkability studies, and yet the walking is the cheapest form of exercise. But if you were to walk down some of the neighborhoods of Ward 1, those streets or those sidewalks have heaved, and it's a tripping hazard. And so if you have, as we're an older population and growing, we want to walk because that's what works for us. You kind of take your life in your hands. You really have to be paying attention to what you're doing. So I would like to see a little bit more investment in sidewalks as opposed to maybe the streets. I think our streets are pretty good.
Well, I'm going to disagree with that. I also live in Ward 1, and I think our streets, especially in the neighborhoods, have really gotten atrocious. My husband drives a lower riding sedan. I drive a two-wheeled scooter sometimes. My kids ride their bikes and longboards, and I am rather shocked at the condition of the roads in the central part of the city. A lot of attention is being paid to where the expansion of our city is going on the east and the west sides, I think, at the expense of the central part of the city. And things are happening, as Robin said, there's major thoroughfares there, but there's a lot of residential neighborhoods in the central part of the city. And while I certainly am not going there just for Ward 1 interests, that will be one issue that I raise a big stink about if I win that seat, because I do think it's an issue. I think there's been some, like I said, ignoring of the core of the city because of what's happening, because of the growth spurts that we're having on the east and west side of towns right now. So our streets could be a lot better. I was up fishing in Montana with my father in Libby, away in the northwest corner of the state, and we drove on gravel roads that were in better condition than the asphalt roads in the city of Casper. So we need to do better.
The roads in Casper, all over Casper, not just Ward 1, need a lot of assistance. For example, over by, I think it is by the cemetery, that road's falling apart. There's about an inch of overlay that was done on it, and it's shoddy at best when they did that. I've talked to a few of my constituents over in Ward 3. The sidewalks that the garbage trucks are driving over when they enter and exit alleys, they're just destroying them. They've talked to the city council, and the city council basically did nothing about it. The 2nd Street, we need a plan in place. That's a major thoroughfare going through Casper, and we really need a plan in place for the expansion of Casper. That is getting so congested that that it needs help, and we need help with the flow of traffic, especially at 5 o'clock. The water and sewer, we're doing a darn good job on that. But we should start looking at water treatment plant, upgrading it, and same way as the wastewater treatment plant. Thank you.
Well, this is my last question that I've got, and we'll talk to the rest of the board soon. But Robin, for you, bicyclists, Casper had a high-profile fatal vehicle-bike collision this summer, and has had a number of vehicle and pedestrian injuries and casualties over the last couple of years. What would you, as a city council member, propose on bike and pedestrian safety? You talked a little bit about walkability. What about just survivability?
Well, I wouldn't ride a bicycle in town. I would only ride a bicycle if I rode a bike. I would only ride it on the Platte River Parkway, because that would be about the only place that I would feel safe. Everybody shares the road: bicyclists, pedestrians, motorcyclists, and drivers. And I have found, it seems like as we're driving through Casper, that there's more people who are on their cell phones or they're texting. I've even seen somebody driving and having a book in front of them.
Good book.
It must have been a good book, you know. So there has to be some community awareness that needs to be done. I mean, I think bicycle safety classes for kiddos, and kids are just not thinking. They're having fun riding their bike, and they are not aware of how dangerous it can be if a car hits them. So we need to have some community education, but we also have adults who are riding bicycles. Now, I have seen bicyclists ignore traffic rules as well. So there's two sides of the street. I mean, you come to a four-way stop and a bicycle should stop, and zip, they go right on through. Riding on the wrong side of the street, so people who don't know how to ride their bikes safely. We need to have a strong community education plan, especially for the young ones. And I don't know if Safe Kids Day is one of those venues. I know that they do some of it, but I think it's got to be a stronger effort than what we are doing right now, because bicyclists are they're at risk. Wearing helmets, man, I never wore a helmet when I was a kid, but I would never let my kids go out and ride without wearing a helmet now. You almost have to be like a super alien to go ride your bike and even make sure you don't crush your head. So I support that we need to have more community education for it, but we also have got to have more respect for each other, whether we're walking, driving, or riding a bike or a motorcycle, and pay attention to what's going on around us. We are so inundated with so many things to distract us.
That's a concern of mine. I guess what I would propose would be equally would be, public service announcements. I don't think we share the road right now because Casper is designed around the automobile and trucks. Our streets are incredibly wide, in my opinion, sometimes ridiculously so. There are 4-lane streets where I don't think there need to be. A lot of people seem to stay in the left lane anyway, so I'm not sure why we have 4 lanes to begin with. But like I said, I use a 2-wheeled vehicle. My kids like to ride their bikes. We're close enough to Natrona County High School that my kids can walk or ride to school. But I've seen things in other communities, bike lanes, paint is pretty cheap. Establishing bike lanes, I even saw in one city where the bike lanes are down the middle of the road, not off to the side, and I think people don't see you when you're off to the side. But if you're in the middle, they might. And the other thing, we did improve a lot of crosswalks in the city a couple of years ago, and I was very grateful for that. Excuse me, the flashing lights, The bright yellow signs, I think, was a marked improvement, very defined stripes in the road that alert you that this is a crosswalk. Even the one on Center Street by the courthouse was a smart improvement. What I've seen in addition to that in other communities, the belt and suspenders are big orange flags that pedestrians pick up and carry with them as they walk across the street. I think I even saw it in Pinedale when we were driving through Pinedale. So those are inexpensive things that we can do to address this issue. I think, unfortunately, some of the things that have happened have been related to drunk driving issues, which, can the council do much about that? Probably not. But these other safety issues and being willing to say we want to be a community where we truly share the road with pedestrians and bicyclists, and we have to ask drivers to step up and acknowledge that.
Yes, the survivability of a bicyclist isn't very good here in Casper. But what I'd like to see bike lanes. You know, we don't have them in Casper here. We need to educate not only young individuals, we need to educate adults in being responsible and looking out for the other person. That's what it's all about. And same way with texting, and I see everybody on the cell phone when they're driving. I don't care who it is, whether it's a policeman, whether it's a private individual. Everybody's on the cell phone. And but yes, I think bike lanes is what we really need.
What's the last question I have for you? Any other questions?
So I don't think we came all the way back to Kenny.
Oh, I'm sorry, Kenny.
Yeah, let's-
I did it to you last time too, didn't I?
I know, you're like, we're almost
I'm
done.
so
Yeah,
sorry.
almost done. This is an interesting topic, and I actually spent some time, waving with my little campaign sign, and I saw people putting on mascara. The cell phone's definitely a huge problem. I didn't see anybody reading a book, but when you're putting your makeup and your jewelry on when you're driving, it's frightening. And actually, 2 days before the primary, my husband and I got rear-ended at 40 miles an hour while we were stopped. So it's a huge, huge issue, and it needs an attack from several different directions, both from driving safety and pedestrian and bicycle safety. And unfortunately, it seems like it always takes a tragedy to bring this forward. So we have this at the city staff level right now, trying to come up with a multiple set of ideas on how we can actually improve safety and make these changes. Interestingly, though, some of our most experienced bicycle riders are ones that I see breaking the rules. You can't ride two bicycles side by side. That's against our ordinances. But that's what I see them doing, and those are the ones that are doing their 10 and 20 and 50 mile bike rides. So I think we start with our bicycle, maybe not fanatics, but the ones that are very passionate about bicycling, and we work our way down into the youth level as well. We have some bike lanes right now, and I drive that road every day, and I don't see a lot of people utilizing it. So I think it's going to take meeting with those user groups to find out what they want and what they want to use, and then try to implement that with what fits with our budget and what's going to be safe with people driving.
Thank you. Sorry for this.
You're good, no worries.
Well, now, any other questions from members of the board?
So I'd like to maybe give everybody an opportunity to take 60 seconds. We'll start with you, Kim, at the end, just to, kind of a closing statement, and anything that maybe we didn't bring up today that is important to you as you make your, final move through the campaign season. So.
Well, thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. Again, my name is Kimberly Holloway, and I'm running for City Council in Ward 1. And I'm running because I think the people of that ward, including myself, deserve better representation than we currently have. There's a terrible acrimony towards government right now at the local level and in many levels. And I think one of my priorities will be to work on reestablishing that trust, and I think doing that is going to take the whole group, the council as a whole, to make some positive steps. But I also think it's up to each council member to educate their constituents and take the time to remind people that it's a working group. They're there for the good of the city as a whole, not just personal interests. I am not running because I have a chip on my shoulder or an agenda or there's a single issue burning in me that I want addressed. I'm running because I'm raising my family in this city. It's a great city. I see the potential now and the potential for great things in the future. So, thank you.
Once again, thank you very much for having me today. The biggest reason I'm running again is I believe in integrity, honesty, and transparency. Right now, I don't think we're getting any of those from the current city council, any of the members. With that being said, we have some very interesting, we've got Casper Mountain that we can plan and we can build on in the future. We've got the North Platte River that we can go ahead and exploit that for future tourism and things of that nature. We've got a good city and we've got a great anemones here. I would like to touch on the subject of Hogadon, and I don't know why I keep going back to that, but you know, there's a gentleman by the name of Ben Brown that lives at the base of the mountain. He approached the city council basically stating that he needed, he was concerned about the silt ruining his well water. Well, it did. Now it's contaminated, his well water, and he invited the city council members up there to his house to show him what was going on. There was only one person that showed any interest in it, and that was Mr. Hedquist. And I think it's a travesty that we have individuals that are doing what they're doing in there and violating state statutes, not only state statutes, but breach of contract. And I'm looking and want to work for the future of Casper. Thank you.
Thank you. You know, I think the council's actually worked very hard the past 4 years. We don't always agree, but we agree to disagree, and I think we've actually been fairly respectful of that. I'm running in Ward 3 because we're going to lose one of our longtime council members, Paul Bertolio, and I think that we need a little bit of a historical background for new council members, and that's really my motivation to be there. One comment for Mr. Brown, we actually offered to come up and flush his system and he refused. So I think the public should know that we really do try to help our citizens when they have a concern, but sometimes they refuse, sometimes the whole story doesn't get out there. Council is ready to move on and get back to business of doing the great things that we can do in our community. The economy is fabulous. I think we can really move forward and do some amazing things, and I hope that, you know, the couple of others on council will join us in moving forward, because we have moved forward and we have decided that it's time to refocus, and I want to help council continue that mission and really start getting back to business.
And I am running for city council. I am a fiscal conservative, so I'm really concerned about us spending down too much of our savings. I want to make sure that, well, indeed, we need to take care of business. We also need to make sure we still have something for a rainy day. And I'm not that boom and bust kind of a scare, but still, we have been there at one point in time. I also believe that this current council, at least what I've seen over the last 2 years, that there really has been a lack of leadership, and that they've gotten mired into a lot of things that have taken them away from running the $185 million business that the city of Casper is. The council is the board of directors, and it is our responsibility to make sure that this business runs smoothly. And there are many, many facets to it, whether it's the river, it's the mountain, it's the streets, no matter what it is, we have to be concerned about all of those things to make sure that this community becomes just as, maybe not number 50, but up to number 1 in terms of good places to live. I love living in Casper. I moved here in 1979. I came back, left in 85 and came back in 93 because I could just see that Casper was sitting sort of on a precipice of some really good things, and it's taken 20 years, but it is awesome. And this is a wonderful community. I want to be a part of that and helping to preserve it and make it better for the next generations.
And thanks to all of you for coming.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.